I was not going to prepare a speech because I was told I did not have to. Then I was told I had to prepare a speech, so I did on this plate. So please bear with me as I read off my plate. This week's Parsha, which I usually don't talk about because most students at Yale University are not aware that there is a Parsha, but I think everyone here knows that we have a weekly Torah reading. This week's Parsha, is the story of Noah and the Ark and the flood. So it follows quickly on the heels of the creation story. We know that in the story of creation, the Torah says that God created the world with the faculty of speech, right? Now we know that God doesn't actually speak. Even when God speaks to people, he doesn't speak like you speak with your voice box and your lips and your mouth. He doesn't have any of those things. As such, he cannot speak, but he just lets people know what he wants them to know. But we know that the Torah says that God spoke the world into existence. The Torah says that it was a speech. In Hebrew, to speak is lidaber, to speak. Interestingly, the word davar, which is related to the word lidaber, means object or thing, right? So through the faculty of speech, so things and objects came into existence. That's the creation story. Fine, but why? Why is it through speech? Maybe it should be through thought. Maybe you should say God made with his hands, and we still would have understood it to be a metaphor, right? We would never have read it literally if it was said God made with his hands. We would have said, oh, that's a metaphor, just like speech is a metaphor. So why is the metaphor of speech chosen? That's the first question. In this week's Parsha, for the second question, so we know that Noah was in an ark. The ark in Hebrew is teva. The word teva means box. But what else does it mean? What does it mean?
Word.
The word teva means word. So now you have the vision of Noah, his whole family, in this object, this ark, this box, this teva, with all the animals and the feed and all the things, right? You can imagine like huge hamster feeders with that tube that comes down for all the different animals, right? It was packed, and he's in the teva, which means ark, but it also means word. So the world is created with the faculty of speech, which means things, and then the world is saved by Noah in an ark, which teva, which also means word. So what's the emphasis on speech and words? Why is that what's both saving the world and the faculty through which the world is created? So in order to answer this question, just very quickly in my under 5-minute time limit, I'd like to present the following idea. As you might know, there are over 200 flood stories that have been preserved through many cultures, not just Judaism, not just the Torah. There's almost no major culture that has not written or at least passed down orally a story of the flood. Why? So maybe a philosopher would tell you that it speaks to people on some primal level, and maybe a rabbi would tell you it's because it's a historical event. So every single nation had a historical account of the flood that they had been subjected to, insofar that they're all descended from Noah. There is a big difference between the biblical narrative and almost every single other instance of a flood story. Every single other instance of a flood story blames the flood on the gods got angry, the people pulled the wrong switch, right? You ever walk into a house, it's got that red plate, it says like emergency shut off, you want to flip it, right? So maybe someone flipped one of those big switches, all of a sudden the water came down. They have stories where people broke the egg, right? Someone kicked the turtle that the universe was sitting on. Different stories in history, different stories that different nations give over. The gods got angry, the people had to run. Judaism's narrative of the flood is different because it says that the result of the disaster was because of the moral failings of humankind. This is the key to every biblical narrative, and one of the greatest contributions that the Jewish people have to world history that no one ever thinks about. You think about stories like Roman mythology, the Iliad and the Odyssey. right? Ulysses, he goes on a journey. Was he a good person or a bad person? He was a strong person. Jason and the Argonauts, he was tough. That's what Roman and Greek mythology contributed to the world. The Jewish contribution to the historical narrative is that there's moral repercussions for our actions. A hero is a person who's a good person, not a person who's a strong person, not a person who can punch someone or cut off Medusa's head. That doesn't make a hero. That just makes a person with visible prowess. That's not a hero. A hero is when a person is morally upstanding. Therefore, whenever the Torah gives over a story, it gives over the story in terms of, here are the people who are good, here are the people who are bad, and the heroes are the people who are able to overcome the evil and champion the good. That's what made Noah saved, right? The rest of the generation was particularly evil. Noah was much less. He was a good person, and therefore he was saved. That's a uniquely Jewish perspective, and that's how we look at all of Jewish history. That's how we look at all of our heroes. They were our heroes because of the goodness that they contributed. Really, the reason why the world was created was speech, and the reason why the ark comes from the word which means word, is because of this idea that the only narrative which is really valuable is when we can see the moral accomplishments. I'll explain, right? What's speech vis-a-vis thought? Thought is perfect. When you think of something, it's perfection. Or you think of a horse. I once described to my father a horse, like you can imagine like a big black stallion running over the hill. It throws back its head, its mane glistens in the sun, it lets out a neigh, it rears up on its hind legs. So my mother was there, she said to my father, why don't you draw it? So he drew a picture of a stallion. This is what it looked like, right? It looked like some kind of hair comb with a head. So my mother actually took a picture that looked exactly like this, and she framed it, and it hung in their bedroom for a long time. Because it's so ridiculous, and it really draws the difference between the faculty of thought, where you can imagine something perfect, and action, which is much less. Speech is the same thing. When I thought of this talk that I'm giving, it was perfect. All my jokes were funny, everything I said was clear, but then when you stand up and you actually say it, it's on a lower level. It's lacking the perfection. It's not what it could be. If God had created the world with the faculty of thought, so then it would be the perfect world. The Torah says that God created the world with speech to hint at us the idea that it's less than perfect. It's speech as opposed to thought. It's a lower level. The world is created with pieces missing. It's incomplete. That gives us the opportunity to come and be good people and to fill in the holes. Our job as Jews and as people is to lift the world back up to that level of perfection, to take it from like the what has actually happened, the way the world has been created, imperfect, and to lift it back up and move it to that level of the intention of the world, a world which was created which, with speech, leaves over room for us to elevate it back to the level of thought and perfection. So that's the lesson of basically every biblical story. Every time you see a story in Judaism, it's this idea that the world is incomplete. Our job is to complete it. That's what Noah was trying to do. That's why he was saved. And in all of our lives, wherever we find ourselves, there are these opportunities to complete that which is incomplete. Thank you.